The doorbell rings, a sharp sound cutting through the stillness of my childhood home. The echo resonates in my chest, a cruel reminder of how far I've drifted from the girl who once lived here. In my hands, I clutch a warm apple pie, the sweet aroma of cinnamon and sugar filling the air, but it's overshadowed by the heavy pressure of expectations. My family, my father especially, has always demanded perfection, success. But what if all of this, everything I've built, every risk I've taken, could be destroyed in a moment? I step up to the door, my heart pounding. My father's voice, cold and dismissive, stops me in my tracks. "You're not invited." And just like that, the distance I feel between us seems wider than ever. Through the narrow gap in the door, I see my sister Sophia Carter, Uncle Jack, and even Olivia Davis, laughing around the dinner table, the very table I used to sit at. But that wasn't the end. No. A single phone call, one I could never have anticipated, would change everything. I grew up in a house that oozed wealth and status, a townhouse on Rittenhouse Square that screamed perfection. My father, Thomas Carter, had built Matthews Investment Group from the ground up, making it one of Philadelphia's elite financial firms. Success wasn't an option. It was expected. My mother, Elaine, kept everything pristine. Our appearances, our behavior, the flawless dinners. We were the Matthews family, and nothing less than perfection would do. My sister, Sophia Carter, she was the golden child. Harvard Business School, the family firm. She followed the script to a T. But me? I wanted something different. I found my passion in marketing and brand development, and that was a problem. Marketing is for people who can't handle real business, my father had told me one night over dinner. He was disappointed. The weight of his disapproval settled on me, and for the first time I wondered if I'd made the right choice. But here I was, standing at that same door, pie in hand, about to confront everything that had held me back, and everything I had become. Margaret Carter stood frozen in her office, the weight of her father's words hanging in the air. The once familiar hum of the city outside now felt like a distant echo, drowned out by the pounding in her chest. Her father's voice still rang in her ears. Could this really be happening? Was she about to lose everything she'd worked for? The silence felt suffocating, and yet a new fire sparked within her. The question lingered, gnawing at her. What was he hiding? Despite her father's disapproval, Margaret Carter had earned her degree from Philadelphia University. She reluctantly joined Matthews Investment Group in the marketing department. For 5 years, she worked tirelessly to prove herself, eventually becoming the director of client relations and marketing. But things had begun to change. 8 months ago, while preparing materials for a client presentation, she discovered irregular transactions. High-profile investors had accounts with patterns that raised red flags. When she brought these concerns to her father, his reaction surprised her. "Those accounts are handled personally by me," he snapped, grabbing the files from her hands. "Some matters are beyond your understanding, Margaret Carter. Stick to your brochures and leave the real business to those qualified to handle it." That confrontation sparked weeks of tension. Her access to certain client files became restricted. Her sister, Sophia Carter, began attending meetings Margaret Carter had once led. Every time she asked questions about company practices, her inquiries were met with dismissal or outright hostility. Olivia Davis Adams had been Margaret Carter's best friend since college. They bonded during late-night study sessions and stayed inseparable after graduation. Her family embraced Olivia Davis immediately, often remarking that she was practically a Matthews. 2 years after Margaret Carter joined the firm, Olivia Davis followed suit, working in account management. She became a fixture at family gatherings, holidays, vacations, and Sunday dinners. Uncle Jack, her father's younger brother and the company's legal counsel, had always been different from her father. He encouraged Margaret Carter's independent thinking and occasionally defended her during family disagreements. "The company needs fresh perspectives," he'd argue. "Margaret Carter brings valuable insights." But his support had started to waver in recent months, and his once warm demeanor had cooled considerably. What had changed? What was her father hiding? The tension in the air was thick as Margaret stood there, facing her father's cold, piercing gaze. Her mind raced, heart pounding. Was everything she had worked for now on the verge of collapse? The weight of his disapproval crushed her spirit, but deep down, the spark of defiance ignited. Would she stand her ground or crumble under the pressure? The question hung in the air, unresolved, leaving her at the edge of a decision that would change everything. Margaret Carter had worked tirelessly for years to prove herself in a family business that seemed to define everything. But when she landed Berkshire Development, a major client her father had been chasing for years, she didn't expect the fallout. Instead of pride, she got suspicion. "How did you convince him to sign?" her father demanded, as if questioning her every move. "I did my job," she replied, stunned by the implication. "I created a tailored marketing strategy." His cold response? "Your job is to support this family's interests, not build your personal portfolio." 2 weeks later, she resigned. Margaret wasn't going to stay in a place where her ambitions were crushed. Matthews Marketing Consultancy was born from her determination, and she took her hard-earned clients with her. The family's reaction was swift and brutal. Her mother stopped answering her calls. Sophia Carter sent a venomous email, accusing her of betrayal. Her father threatened legal action but ultimately backed down when his lawyers intervened. Only her cousin Emma stayed in touch. "They talk about you like you're the enemy," Emma said over coffee, a rare moment of truth. "Something's up at the company. Everyone's on edge." Thanksgiving was supposed to be their time, the holiday that had always brought the family together. But when Margaret called her mother a week before, the usual warm tone was gone. "Same time, 2 de Dao. And please wear something appropriate this year," her mother said, the coldness unmistakable. Thanksgiving morning came with an unexpected warmth in the air, the sun streaming in through her apartment windows. Margaret had hoped for reconciliation, her heart cautiously optimistic. She had even baked her father's favorite apple pie. But the family's absence from the tradition she had cherished for years spoke volumes. Something was about to break, and she couldn't turn back now. As the day unfolded, Margaret realized that this was more than a family dispute. It was a fight for her own identity. Would she back down and go crawling back? Or would she take the leap into the unknown, and finally define her own path? The decisions she made next would change everything. The rich aroma of apple pie filled my kitchen, a desperate attempt to smooth over the tension that had been building for months. I spent an hour carefully picking out my outfit, a forest green cashmere sweater and camel wool skirt, the exact combination my mother had once complimented. My hair was styled the way she liked, simple and neat, and I kept the makeup to a minimum, knowing she disapproved of anything bold. Every detail, from the pie to the outfit, was designed to avoid criticism, to make this moment feel like a step toward reconciliation. "Family is everything," I whispered to myself, repeating my father's favorite phrase as I grabbed my purse, the pie, and a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon from my client's vineyard, my small symbol of success, one I hoped they might finally recognize. The drive to Rittenhouse Square felt longer than it should have. I ran through scenarios in my mind, conversations with Sophia Carter about her business trip to London, compliments for my mother's always perfect table setting, small talk with Uncle Jack about the Patriots, making sure not to touch on anything too personal, or my departure from the family firm. But as I turned onto Chestnut Street, my stomach knotted. The sight of so many cars parked near my parents' house was odd, far more than usual. Olivia Davis's blue Audi was there, though she normally arrived with me. Uncle Jack's Mercedes, my sister's Range Rover, and even cars from family friends and business associates filled the block. I parked a block away and looked at myself in the rearview mirror one last time. The reflection staring back wasn't just mine anymore. I wasn't just the daughter, the sister, the family member. I was someone else, someone trying to prove she could make it on her own. With a deep breath, I grabbed the pie and walked toward the imposing townhouse that had been my childhood home. The November air hit me, carrying the scent of wood, smoke, and roasting turkey. This was it, the moment that could either heal everything or shatter it beyond repair. I stood there, pie in hand, feeling the weight of everything I had tried to escape. Through the tall windows of my parents' house, I could see the flicker of candlelight, shadows moving against the warm glow of the dining room. My heart raced as I climbed the familiar stone steps, each one heavier than the last. The sound of laughter spilled out into the night air, accompanied by the soft strains of classical music, my mother's signature touch on any special occasion. With a deep breath, I rang the doorbell, the cold November wind stinging my face. My nerves were a tangled mess, but I told myself to hold it together. As the door swung open, I was met with the sight of both my parents, standing like sentinels at the threshold. My mother, in her pearl gray cocktail dress and diamonds that had been passed down for generations, looked at me with a coldness that pierced through the air. My father, sharp as ever in his navy blazer and regimental tie, regarded me with a detachment I could feel in my bones. "Margaret Carter," my father's voice cut through the stillness, cold and formal. "What are you doing here?" A shockwave of confusion hit me. "I'm here for Thanksgiving dinner. Mom confirmed last week." My mother's perfectly manicured hand gripped the doorframe. "There's been a misunderstanding," she said, her voice tight. "You're not invited this year." The words landed like a punch. For a moment, I just stared at them, at the coldness in their eyes. Through the space between them, I could see the dining room beyond. The table was set, elegant, pristine, with the family china and crystal gleaming. My mother's centerpiece of autumn flowers and gourds stood tall, dominating the scene. And there, sitting in my seat, was Olivia Davis, my supposed best friend. Around her, Sophia Carter, Uncle Jack, and the rest of them, their eyes now on me. The laughter had stopped. All that was left was the silence. Some faces were uncomfortable. Others were curious. And then there was Olivia Davis, sitting there, a smug satisfaction spreading across her face. My stomach churned. Why was I still trying to fit in here? Would they ever see me as more than just the daughter, the sister? Was I destined to be trapped by their expectations, or was this the moment I would finally break free? As the door slammed shut, the apple pie in my hands felt like a weight I couldn't carry anymore. The silence hit me, heavy, suffocating, and full of questions I was too scared to ask. What had I done wrong? Why couldn't they just see me? My heart pounded as I turned to leave. Was this it? Had I lost my family forever? Or was there something more? Something I still didn't understand? I stood there, pie in hand, as my father's voice echoed coldly, "That will not be necessary." I tried to keep my voice steady, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "But I brought pie. Dad's favorite." He didn't flinch. "We have dessert arranged. I think it's best if you leave now." The weight of his words hit me harder than any argument ever could. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a last-minute decision. They had planned this. I wasn't invited, not this year, not ever. My best friend, Olivia Davis, was sitting where I should have been, at my seat, at my family table, and it hit me. They all chose her over me. Can I ask why? My voice cracked. My mother's voice was barely a whisper. "You know why, Margaret Carter. Your choices have consequences." With that, the door began to close. "Goodbye, Margaret Carter. Drive safely." The door slammed with finality, leaving me standing alone on the porch, pie in hand, heart in pieces. I heard the conversation resume inside, laughter, music, normalcy, but all I could hear was the hollow ringing of their dismissal. I didn't break. My pride kept me upright, even as I walked away, step by slow step, to my car. The pie in my hands had lost all meaning. I had no tears left to shed, only questions that burned in my mind. Once in the car, I placed the pie carefully on the passenger seat, gripping the steering wheel with white-knuckled hands. Through the rearview mirror, I saw my family, the ones who still called themselves my family, gathered around the table. A new banner hung above my father's chair, its golden letters burning into my soul. Family first. And I wondered, did I even belong here anymore? The wind bit at my skin, like it was mocking me. I thought I knew what rejection felt like, but this was different. Olivia Davis sitting where I should have been, Uncle Jack not even blinking, the door slamming behind me. The truth finally hit me. This wasn't just about my business. This was about who I was becoming. And now the stakes had just gone up. It was all too clear now. Family first? Only if you don't dare challenge the path they've laid out for you. The hurt from moments ago? That faded quickly, replaced by something colder. Anger. Not the kind that makes you act out, but the kind that sharpens your focus. It made me see one thing. They made their choice. Now I was going to make mine. I drove away from Rittenhouse Square, my mind a blur, but my body moving with purpose. The city felt distant as I made my way toward the Charles River, the roads eerily empty on Thanksgiving Day. Pulling into a quiet spot overlooking the water, I killed the engine and let everything sink in. This wasn't just about missing dinner. This was rejection at its purest. Olivia Davis knew what was coming. Uncle Jack, who'd always had my back, sat there, silent. Their cold indifference made the air feel thick. The river in front of me seemed to move slower as I thought back to a conversation I'd had months ago with Michael Donovan. Michael was a former law school buddy, now working with the SEC. After a few drinks, I had confided in him about some unsettling things I had noticed at work. Large transfers, shady offshore dealings. It had all been too much to ignore. "Do you have proof, Margaret Carter?" Michael asked, eyes serious. I had copies of files, but I hadn't looked at them since. Family loyalty, right? But I kept them, just in case. And now, I wondered if that just in case had finally arrived. The air inside the car felt heavier, suffocating even. Margaret Carter's heart raced as she stared at the phone screen, her finger frozen over the call button. She could hear Michael's voice on the other end, warm and welcoming, but her own uncertainty twisted in her chest. Was it too late to turn back now? Was she ready to unravel everything, knowing there was no coming back? The faint echo of her parents' rejection haunted her thoughts. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down, every second stretching longer. Could this one call ruin everything she had worked for? "If you ever decide to review those files," he had said, sliding his business card across the table, "call me immediately. Some matters go beyond family loyalty." The words echoed in her mind now, a constant reminder of what she was about to face. Her hand hovered over the phone, the screen blurring slightly as her thoughts raced. This wasn't just a phone call. This was a line in the sand. Once she pressed call, everything would change. The family she'd known, her parents, her uncle, would be gone. The life they'd built, torn apart. But the truth, it wouldn't stay hidden any longer. Michael answered on the third ring, the sound of children playing in the background. "Margaret Carter, happy Thanksgiving. Is everything okay?" "Not exactly," she replied, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "Remember our conversation about those files I copied? I think it's time I showed them to you." There was a pause on the other end. "This sounds serious. Are you sure you want to pursue this? Once we start looking, we cannot unsee what we find." Margaret Carter's breath caught in her chest. Was she ready to destroy everything? "I'm sure," she said, surprising even herself with the certainty in her voice. "My family just made their position clear. Now, I need to stand by my principles." "Okay," Michael replied. "I can meet you tomorrow morning, 8 due, at my office. Bring everything you have." She ended the call and let out a shaky breath. The drive back to her apartment felt like it took forever. The streets seemed so different now. Every familiar corner, every place she used to know. Now just a reminder of a family that never really had her back. Could she really do this? Would everything she'd worked for come crumbling down? One call, one choice. Would it all be worth it? Margaret Carter stood at the threshold of her future, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. The Thanksgiving dinner she had planned in her head felt like a lifetime ago. Her family, the tradition, all now just a faded memory. She'd spent years fighting to carve her own path, but now, with Sophia Carter's cold text, everything she thought she knew about herself felt like it was unraveling. This wasn't just about proving her family wrong. No, it was deeper than that. The pressure wasn't coming from them. It was coming from within her. She'd been living her life in the shadows of expectations, both theirs and her own. But now the mask had fallen. Sitting alone in her apartment, she couldn't ignore the reality any longer. The meticulously planned fall decorations, the small table set for one. It wasn't just a reflection of her isolation. It was a reminder that she had always been alone, even when surrounded by family. Her phone buzzed with Sophia Carter's message. "This is for the best. You brought this on yourself. No explanation, just judgment." Her sister, the one who once knew her best, had turned her back. Margaret Carter didn't reply. Instead, she poured herself a glass of wine, the bottle once intended for a festive dinner now offering nothing but bitter comfort. Her refrigerator offered no traditional feast, just cheese, crackers, and deli turkey. She arranged them on a plate, the grapes, the crumbs of what could have been a family celebration. She raised her glass to herself. "Happy Thanksgiving to me," she whispered. Then the tears came. Not just a few, but a flood. The years of stifled emotions, of playing by others' rules, burst through like a dam breaking. She cried for the family she thought she had, for the betrayal, for the path she had to walk alone now. But when the tears stopped, something else emerged. A strange clarity. She realized for the first time that her rejection wasn't just a door closing. It was her freedom. She had been holding on to a past that wasn't hers, trying to live up to someone else's expectations. Now, with that rejection, those ties were severed. The question wasn't if she was ready for this new life. It was who she was going to be when the dust settled. One phone call had shifted everything. But now, the real question lingered in the air. Was she finally ready to live her own life, on her own terms? I walked into my home office, my heart pounding as I opened the hidden panel behind the bookshelf. For months, I'd kept these files out of sight, but the time for avoidance was over. There they were, account statements, emails, investment reports, spread out in front of me like a roadmap of lies. At first, I'd only copied these documents out of instinct, a nagging feeling that something was wrong. But now, with a glass of wine in hand, I was finally ready to face the truth. The patterns began to make sense, but not the way I expected. Account statements showed irregular withdrawals. Investment reports were full of discrepancies. Transfers to offshore accounts, vague labels, what started as small anomalies was quickly revealing something bigger. My father, the man who built his reputation on trust in Philadelphia's high society, had been running a Ponzi scheme, and he wasn't doing it alone. Then I found the emails. My father calmly discussing how to manipulate clients, adjust returns, reallocate assets, the sophistication of it all, the kind of thing you expect from Harvard Business School grads. But the worst part, the emails that mentioned me. Margaret Carter's access to the Ferguson and Williams accounts needs to be restricted, my father wrote just weeks before everything unraveled. Her marketing role doesn't require this level of financial detail. Sophia Carter, my own sister, replied, "Already handled. Olivia Davis has redirected her to new client presentations." Olivia Davis, my best friend. The glass in my hand trembled. I had always believed I was fighting against my father, but now, what if he'd been preparing me for this moment all along? The scent of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air as Margaret Carter sat at her old kitchen table, scrolling through the email chain. The hum of the refrigerator was deafening in the silence. The warmth of the mug in her hands contrasted with the cold realization creeping over her. The words on the screen twisted like a dagger. Betrayal. She'd trusted Olivia Davis, shared her dreams and fears, only to find out everything had been used against her. The thought of Olivia Davis's duplicity stung like a sharp, unspoken truth. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled further, and there it was. Repeated references to Olivia Davis in emails with her family, always in a context that made it clear she'd been actively working against her. Olivia Davis had reported on her every move, every suspicion, using their friendship as a surveillance tool. Maintain normal relations with Margaret Carter while we assess the situation, her father wrote. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. Olivia Davis had been watching her, feeding her every fear and doubt right back to the people she trusted most. The emails continued, each one more gut-wrenching than the last. Olivia Davis will take over Margaret Carter's client relationships, her father had written after Margaret Carter left the family firm. Her loyalty has earned her this advancement. Loyalty. The word that had once meant everything to Margaret Carter, the very thing that had driven her to trust Olivia Davis so completely, had now been weaponized against her. But then she found it. The personal folder. Social media screenshots. Photos that at first seemed irrelevant, but the deeper she dug, the more it became clear. Olivia Davis and Sophia Carter had been together, not just as friends. Their intimacy was undeniable, and in the final photo, they were at her father's lake house, clearly unaware they were being photographed. The shock hit her like a wave. Olivia Davis hadn't just betrayed her professionally, she'd been involved with her sister. The realization left Margaret Carter feeling physically ill, the depth of the deception almost too much to bear. Her phone rang, snapping her out of her shock. Michael. "I couldn't wait until tomorrow," he said, his voice urgent. What was going to happen now? How would she face the people who had turned her world upside down? Would she ever be able to trust again? The smell of her grandmother's lavender perfume filled the room, as Margaret Carter sat in the old family study, staring at a picture of herself and Olivia Davis from years ago. The laughter of the past echoed in her mind, a stark contrast to the cold betrayal she felt now. The faint creak of the wooden floorboards beneath her feet brought her back to a time when things were simpler, before her family's expectations clouded her every move. The warmth of the summer sun through the window only highlighted the chill in her heart. Margaret Carter's life had always been about proving herself. Determined, ambitious, and fiercely independent, she carved her own path in a world where her family's expectations were always just out of reach. But trust, once broken, never returns. The betrayal she now faced was something deeper, more personal. As she scrolled through the damning emails, her hands trembled. Olivia, her former best friend, had turned on her. She had fed her every secret, every doubt to the very people who should have stood by her. It wasn't just the business. It was everything. Olivia and her sister, Sophia Carter, together in ways Margaret Carter never saw coming. And her father's betrayal? A punch to the gut. Olivia Davis will take over Margaret Carter's client relationships, he'd written. Loyalty. It was the one thing Margaret Carter had trusted, the one thing she'd shared with Olivia, only for it to be used against her. The emails told a story of betrayal. But the photos, they were the final blow. The shocking images of Olivia and Sophia Carter caught in an intimate moment at the family lake house. It wasn't just the business anymore. It wasn't just the betrayal at work. It was everything. The weight of it made her feel physically sick. And then, the call. Michael's voice broke through her shock. "I couldn't wait until tomorrow," he said, his voice urgent. "We need to talk about Matthew's investment group. Serious fraud." Margaret Carter listened, barely able to focus. There was more. Michael's voice turned grave as he continued. "Your father transferred significant ownership to Sophia Carter and Olivia. Does that name mean anything to you?" Her throat tightened. Olivia, my former best friend. The bitterness in her voice surprised even her, but there was more. The trust fund, the one her grandparents set up for her, a family inheritance. It had been drained, without her signature, without her knowledge. Michael's words rang in her head. "We'll need to investigate this. Are you prepared to go to the SEC?" The question hung in the air like a dark cloud. Margaret Carter knew what this would mean, an investigation that would tear apart everything, her family, her memories, her entire life. Despite the betrayal, despite the anger, a small part of her hesitated. These weren't just criminals. These were her family. Her father, the man who taught her to ride a bike. Her sister, the one who protected her. Her mother, who'd always been there. But today, they had all stood at that door and told her she wasn't welcome. What was she supposed to do now? Would she walk away? Or would she stand and fight? The hum of the computer was the only sound in the room as Margaret Carter sat frozen, her eyes glued to the screen. It was almost unbearable. The digital files, the evidence she'd worked tirelessly to organize, were now at her fingertips. One click? That was all it would take to change everything, to expose everything. Could she really do this? Could she shatter the life she'd known for years? The life that was built on lies and betrayal? Her fingers trembled as they hovered over the send button. The weight of the decision pressed down on her chest, every breath feeling heavier than the last. The consequences were unimaginable. Public exposure, criminal charges, the destruction of everything her family had built. Was she ready to destroy her own past? The family she had once loved? For the truth? For a moment she remembered her mother, comforting her after a nightmare, her father's voice praising her first academic achievement, and Sophia Carter's hand in hers on their first day of school. It wasn't supposed to end like this, but they had crossed the line. They had used her, manipulated her, and now it was her turn to act, to fight back. Her thoughts raced. What would the world think of them once the truth was out? She thought of the investors who trusted her father, their life savings placed in his hands, unaware of the deception. The moment she pressed send felt like stepping into another reality, one where she could no longer look back. Could she handle the fallout? Or was she already too far gone? As the files left her inbox, Margaret realized this was the point of no return. Her world, her family, and her future were about to unravel. Would she be able to bear the consequences, or would she regret this moment forever? The phone screen flickered, casting a faint glow in the dim room. My heart hammered in my chest, each beat echoing in the silence. Hands trembling, not from fear, but from the realization. This was it, the point of no return. As my father's message popped up, sharp and cold, I felt the weight of every choice I'd made crash down on me. What have you done? Each word, a strike against everything I'd worked for. Was this the final straw? The quiet in the room felt suffocating, and for the first time I wondered, could I really turn back now? I just sent out the emails, key documents to Thomas Berkshire and a few major investors in my father's firm, with a brief explanation. Then a final message to my cousin Emma. Things are about to change dramatically for the family. Be careful about your investments. For a moment, I sat there, my mind frozen, bracing for what was coming. But then, in an attempt to act normal, I moved to the kitchen. The clink of dishes filled the space as I made myself a simple Thanksgiving meal. Turkey sandwiches, instant mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce. It felt absurd to be doing something so mundane while everything was falling apart around me. Then, exactly 19 minutes after I hit send, my phone lit up. A message from my father. "What have you done?" Panic shot through me as I stared at the screen. Before I could breathe, my mother's number popped up, her frantic voicemails pouring in. "Margaret Carter, whatever you think you know, you need to call us. This is a family matter." Sophia Carter's texts escalated from anger to desperation. You have no idea what you've done. This isn't just about Dad. You're destroying all of us." And then Olivia Davis, who hadn't spoken to me in weeks, had the nerve to send a message that almost made my blood boil. "There's been a misunderstanding. I never meant to hurt you. What happened with your family is complicated, but I never betrayed you the way you think. I didn't respond to any of them." A surprising message popped up from Uncle Jack. Margaret Carter's phone buzzed, a shrill reminder that the world was changing. Fast. She'd just sent the final email, sending the weight of her decision crashing down on her. What had she done? The cold silence of the room pressed in, but Margaret Carter wasn't backing down. Not now. Not when everything she'd fought for was on the line. Then came the messages. Her father's warning. "What have you done?" Followed by her mother's desperate voicemail. "Margaret Carter, you need to call us now. This is bigger than you think." Her sister's angry texts spilled in, as did a cryptic message from Olivia Davis. Everything felt like it was spiraling out of control. But just as she braced for the worst, another message arrived. It was from Uncle Jack. "You showed more courage than I did. Be careful. Don't meet with anyone alone. I'll call when I can." That fleeting bit of reassurance felt like a lifeline, a brief moment of comfort before the storm. Then the floodgates opened. Messages from colleagues at Matthews Investment Group. Chaos was erupting in the office. "Your father and sister rushed out. Security's securing everything. What's going on?" A company-wide email flashed. "Emergency board meeting canceled. Trading suspended for Matthews Investment Group." The cold reality set in, and then came the headlines. Major fraud allegations. SEC investigation. Her father's final ultimatum. "You have 20 minutes to explain how you plan to fix this. Some bells can't be unrung, Margaret Carter." She let the minutes slip by. No response, no explanation. Margaret Carter turned off her phone's notifications. For the first time, she felt a strange sense of peace. She'd done what she believed was right. Whatever happened next, it was out of her hands. Suddenly, her doorbell rang. A shiver ran down her spine. Knife in hand, she knew who it was. The clock on the microwave read 22 minutes. She was running out of time. The tension in the air was suffocating. As my father's voice echoed through the hallway, something inside me snapped. I had built my life, my business, all of it, just to be torn down by them. My heart pounded as I waited for their next move. Would they walk away, or would they push harder? What would I do next? I held my breath, bracing for whatever came next, uncertain if I was ready to fight or to let go. I set the knife down and walked slowly to the door, the floor beneath me creaking with every step. I peered through the peephole. There they were. My father, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. My mother, pale, rigid, like a statue that might crumble. Sophia Carter's mascara streaked down her cheeks, her eyes red and swollen. And Olivia Davis? She lingered in the back, her expression one of quiet misery. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and opened the door. How could you do this to us? My father's voice hit me like a slap, raw and furious, carrying the weight of a lifetime of expectations. His face was flushed with a rage I had rarely seen, even during our worst arguments. "You've ruined everything, Margaret Carter," he shouted as if the earth itself had cracked open beneath us. My mother stepped forward, her hand on his arm, trying to pull him back, her voice dropping to a hiss. "Not here, Harold," she said, glancing nervously at the neighbors. "This needs to be handled privately." I stood there, strangely calm, in the face of their fury. "If you want to talk, you can come inside," I said, stepping back but with a quiet defiance. "But you will not shout at me in my own home." They filed in, reluctantly, as if they were marching to their own executions. My father, still trembling with anger, couldn't take his eyes off me. My mother surveyed my modest apartment, disdain written all over her face. Sophia Carter couldn't meet my gaze. And Olivia Davis, She lingered by the door, a silent observer in this family disaster. Where was Uncle Jack? I noticed he wasn't with them. "Sit down if you want," I offered, gesturing to the couch. But no one moved. My father's voice dropped, but the intensity never wavered. "You need to retract everything, immediately." His eyes burned with desperation, but I wasn't backing down. "Call your contact at the SEC. Tell them it was a mistake. We can still fix this, if you act quickly." "Retract the truth?" I raised an eyebrow. "Retract documented evidence of fraud, misappropriation of funds, and identity theft?" I let the words hang in the air. "I don't think that's possible, Dad." He looked at me like I was the one who had lost touch with reality. "You don't understand what you're doing," he said, but I could hear the cracks in his voice. It was the first time I felt like I understood something he didn't. My mother stepped forward then, her social mask slipping just enough for me to see the fear beneath it. "Margaret Carter, you've gone too far. You need to fix this, for all of us." "But how? How could I fix something that was already broken? Something that they had broken?" The tension in the room is unbearable. Margaret stands frozen, her heart pounding as Sophia's words hit her like a ton of bricks. The air thickens with the weight of betrayal. Her father's lies, the ones she'd always believed to be truth, now feel like daggers in her back. She's no longer just the rebellious daughter fighting for her own dreams. No, now she's trapped, caught in a web of family secrets, ambition, and a crushing realization. What if everything she's worked for, the business she built, the fight for independence, was founded on nothing but lies? Her father's voice breaks through the silence. "Do you have any idea what this will do to our reputation, to our standing in the community?" He glares at her, the words coming fast, desperate. "Every charity board, every social connection, everything we've built over decades, destroyed because you couldn't follow simple family loyalty." He spits the word like venom. Loyalty. She tastes it in her mouth, and it burns. Was it loyalty when he accessed her trust fund without her permission? Was it loyalty when he left her out of Thanksgiving while welcoming the woman who stabbed her in the back? She holds her ground, eyes locked on him. "Please, explain your definition of loyalty, because it seems like it only works in one direction." Sophia, now sitting on the couch uninvited, speaks up, her voice trembling. "You don't understand the pressure, Margaret. Dad needed certain returns to keep major clients. When the market tanked in 2019, we had to adjust, just to stay afloat." Margaret feels the rage bubbling up again. "Adjust? By stealing from me." But her father cuts her off, snapping. "Do not say another word, Sophia. She's probably recording this entire conversation." Margaret nearly laughs at his paranoia. "I don't need to record anything. The documents speak for themselves." Her words hit the air like a slap. Then Olivia Davis, eyes red, steps forward. "Margaret, please, this affects more than just us. There are employees, clients, families who will lose everything. There must be a way to resolve this without complete destruction." Her plea is audacious, and it ignites Margaret's fury. "You have no right to speak to me," she spits. "You used our friendship to spy on me. You reported everything I said to them, all while you were involved with Sophia." Olivia Davis's face crumples, and for a moment, it feels like time stands still. "It wasn't like that," she whispers, voice breaking. "Not at first. It happened later. I never meant to hurt you." But before Margaret can respond, the door creaks open. Uncle Jack steps in, his presence commanding attention. He nods briefly at Margaret, then turns to her father. "Harold, they're securing the office files. The SEC has already frozen the primary accounts." The room falls into an eerie silence, the weight of the moment suffocating them all. "You need to call Gerald immediately." He turned to me. "I came to warn you. They are looking for someone to blame, and they have decided it should be you." My father's expression confirmed this assessment. "You were involved enough in these accounts to be implicated," he said, his tone shifting from rage to calculated manipulation. If you cooperate now, present this as a misunderstanding, we can protect you. Otherwise, our lawyers will have no choice but to present evidence of your involvement. Evidence you would fabricate, I replied calmly, but that will not work. I have been documenting my concerns and the restricted access to those accounts for months. Michael has the timeline of my discoveries and communications, and I was never a signatory on the fraudulent transfers. My father's face darkened at the mention of Michael's name. So, this is about some man. You are destroying your family for an SEC boyfriend. This is about doing what is right. I countered something this family seems to have forgotten long ago. My mother approached me, attempting a different tactic. Darling, we can fix this. Your father can move funds to cover any discrepancies. No one will lose money. The firm can recover. We can welcome you back, restore your position, even give you more authority, whatever you want. The transparent bribery attempt was almost sad. It is too late for that. The authorities already have everything. Name your price, my father said bluntly. Everyone has one. $1 million, $5 million. Your own division within the company. What will it take for you to help us contain this? I looked at him, truly looked at the man who had raised me now revealed. As someone who believed everything and everyone could be bought, I already have what I need. The truth. Truth. He scoffed. Truth does not pay bills or maintain reputations. Truth is a luxury for people who do not understand how the world really works. I understand exactly how your world works now, I replied, and I want no part of it. Sophia Carter stood suddenly. She is not going to help us, she told my father, but there is something else you should know. She controls the Norton Trust shares now that she is 30. If those shares vote with the board members who are already questioning the leadership, you could lose control of the company even without the SEC investigation. My father whirled toward me, his expression changing from dismissive to calculating. Is this about control? About power in the company? Because we can negotiate that? No, I said firmly, this is about accountability, about facing consequences for choices made knowingly and repeatedly. This is about all the people who trusted you with their financial futures while you used their money as your personal fund. My mother crumpled onto the couch, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. We will be ruined, she whispered. Everything we built, everything we are gone. Sophia Carter knelt beside her, offering comfort while shooting, accusing glares in my direction. Olivia Davis stood awkwardly between groups belonging nowhere. You never should have pushed me away, I said quietly. You never should have treated me like an outsider in my own family. Maybe then I would have helped you find a better solution. You are dead to us. My father spat his last desperate attempt at emotional manipulation. After today, you are no longer a Matthews. I met his gaze steadily. I stopped being a Matthews the moment you closed that door in my face. Now, I need all of you to leave. My lawyer will contact you about any further communications. Olivia Davis made one last attempt to approach me. Margaret Carter, please. I know I hurt you terribly, but you have to believe I cared about you. Our friendship was not a lie. A real friend would not have sat at that table today while I was turned away, I replied. A real friend would have stood up and walked out. You made your choice, Olivia Davis. Now you get to live with it just like the rest of them. One by one, they left my apartment. The last family member left, the door shutting with a finality that felt like a chapter closing. I was left in a room that had been shattered, the tension still thick in the air. Silence. The faint scent of apple pie mingled with the burnt edges of a failed holiday, the sounds of footsteps fading into the distance. But then, something caught my eye. A letter, tucked beneath a pile of scattered papers, slipped from the mess. I picked it up with trembling hands, the weight of it feeling heavier than I could have imagined. It was from my father, written years ago. The words on the page cut through the stillness, a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. What I thought I knew about my family, my life, everything, it was a lie. The truth was right there, staring back at me. And in that moment, I realized this was the moment everything changed. The anger in my father's voice had been loud, but the silence now, it was deafening. One by one, they all left. My father, my mother, Sophia Carter, Olivia Davis. It was like a slow-motion wave of betrayal crashing over me. Olivia Davis's whispered apology still lingered in the air, hollow. Uncle Jack's words, too. "This will get worse before it gets better," he said. He had been right. He'd always known. When the door clicked shut, the world felt different. I was alone, but for the first time in my life, it felt like freedom. No more expectations, no more pretending. Just me and the chance to rebuild. A year later, I stood in my kitchen, the aroma of roasted turkey filling the air, a far cry from the disaster that had been that Thanksgiving. My townhouse was quiet, peaceful. Through the archway, I saw the table, set for 8, each place card a reminder of how far I had come. The Matthews Investment Group was no more. What had been my family's legacy had crumbled under the weight of its secrets, leaving me with nothing but my own future to fight for. Margaret Carter sat alone in the corner of the restaurant, the clinking of glasses and murmurs of other patrons fading into the background. Her mind drifted back to that day, the heat of it, the heavy silence that had hung between her and her family. She could still feel the weight of her father's disappointed gaze, her mother's strained quietness. The familiar scent of her mother's perfume mixed with the sharp, sterile smell of the lawyer's office. That day, Margaret Carter realized she wasn't just fighting to prove herself. She was fighting to survive the suffocating expectations of her family. It wasn't just about success anymore. It was about reclaiming who she was meant to be. After the family walked out of her life one by one, leaving only the echo of slammed doors, Margaret Carter was left standing in the wreckage of her past. The betrayal stung, but the silence that followed was even louder. It wasn't just the absence of her family, it was the absence of everything she thought she knew. The betrayal was inescapable, but with it, she found a strange kind of freedom. There were no more expectations, no more pretending. As she sifted through the mess of scattered papers, a letter slipped out from under the pile. It was from her father, written years ago. Trembling, she unfolded it. The words stung, not just because of the truth they revealed, but because of everything they changed. The weight of that discovery made it clear. She couldn't go back. The anger of her father's voice, his scornful judgment, had been loud. But the silence now, it was deafening. But what could she do? Margaret Carter had no choice but to keep going. Her father, facing multiple charges, had struck a plea deal. The Matthews legacy, the name that once defined her family's success, was now nothing more than a broken shell. And the firm, gone. But just as everything seemed to crumble around her, the unexpected happened. 3 months after the scandal broke, a court-appointed board reached out to Margaret Carter. "We need someone with the Matthews name," they said. "Someone who understands business but wasn't involved in the fraud." The irony wasn't lost on her, but Margaret Carter knew what needed to be done. She wasn't there to rebuild her family's name. She was there to fix what had been broken. She took a position on the board, overseeing compliance and ethical practices. Her relationship with her family was forever changed. Her mother, unable to forgive her for the humiliation, retreated from the public eye. Margaret Carter hadn't expected her to understand. But then, something unexpected happened. 6 months later, Sophia Carter, her estranged sister, reached out. The message was clear. She had been in therapy. "I need to understand why I let everything happen," she admitted. And, slowly, their relationship started to rebuild. Sophia Carter was starting over, working at a small firm, finding a sense of purpose in her new, ethical role. Olivia Davis, too, tried to reach out. Letters, emails, apologies. The betrayal, however, still lingered in the air. The journey wasn't over yet. But Margaret Carter knew this. No matter how long it took, she would rebuild her life. She would prove herself, not just to her family but to the world. And maybe, just maybe, she'd learn how to forgive too. I stood there, staring at the door, my thoughts racing. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent, snapping me out of my reverie. Emma stood in the doorway, her face unreadable, yet I could sense something was off. She was holding a bottle of wine, but it was the homemade cranberry sauce that caught my attention. It felt heavier than it should be. What was she really carrying? "Happy Thanksgiving," she said, her smile warm, but I couldn't shake the tension in the air. "Your first time hosting? How does it feel?" "Terrifying, yet wonderful," I replied, laughing nervously. "I have no idea if this turkey will be edible." She shrugged, her eyes softening. "The food hardly matters. It's about creating a space where people feel valued for who they truly are." The words hit me like a wave. What had I really been building all this time? The path I'd walked, away from my family's empire, from their expectations, had led me here, to this very moment. An hour passed. One by one, the people who mattered most to me arrived. Michael and Grace, Uncle Jack and Robert, each of them a part of my new world, my new family. Then, unexpectedly, Sophia Carter walked in. She held an apple pie, the very same one my father had loved. It hit me hard. "I remembered it was Dad's favorite," she said, her voice quiet but strong. "But it's your favorite too, right?" A lump formed in my throat. That simple gesture, an acknowledgement of everything that had happened, brought tears to my eyes. "Yes," I whispered, "thank you for remembering." But as we all settled in, I couldn't ignore the question lingering in the back of my mind. Was this a new beginning, or just another layer of the mess I was trying to untangle? The doorbell rang again. This time, I wasn't ready for what would come next. I walked past the old brick house, the one where I grew up. The faint hum of a busy street corner played in the background, but my mind drifted back. I could almost smell the coffee brewing inside, mixed with the scent of wood and last night's dinner. It felt like there was an invisible thread pulling me back, making me remember everything. My mom's sharp voice, the weight of her expectations always hanging over me. But today it felt different. That old pressure, the one that used to suffocate me, seemed distant. It wasn't mine anymore. It was like I had stepped into a new chapter of my life. I never imagined it would be like this, standing here, looking at the door that had once been the gateway to everything I thought I needed. But now I could finally see how far I had come. Thanksgiving was supposed to be the same, right? A gathering of family, of tradition. But the truth was, it was anything but normal. This time, I wasn't hosting out of obligation. I wasn't trying to live up to some idea of who I should be. This was my space, my family, chosen, not bound by blood, but by shared values and mutual respect. I raised my glass, the room quieting as I spoke. "Before we eat, I want to say thank you. A year ago, I thought losing my family meant losing everything. But that space? It let something real grow. Real family. Not defined by blood, but by those who stand beside you when it costs something." We all took a moment. The kind of moment you don't forget. And as the night carried on, with laughter, stories, and even a few overcooked turkey bites, I realized something. The pain from last year? It wasn't just rejection. It was freedom. It was the push I needed to break free from toxic relationships, from pretending to be someone I wasn't. By the end of the night, I had found something I never expected. Contentment. The kind that no perfect dinner or perfectly timed family picture could ever give me. This Thanksgiving, unlike all the others, felt real. No flawless turkey. No perfectly aligned chairs. Just us. Ever had to make a tough choice between family loyalty and your personal values? Maybe you've been where I was. torn between who you are and who they want you to be. It's never easy, but those tough decisions, they lead to something better, something real. Share your stories below. Let's start a conversation. The room was quiet, the faint scent of fresh coffee mixing with the crisp winter air. Margaret stood in the middle of her small, buzzing business, her dream, her hard-earned success. The soft glow of sunlight from the window bathed the room, casting long shadows, as her fingers tightened around the letter in her hand. The letter? From her family. She had never thought this moment would come. Her heart raced as she read their words. Acceptance. It wasn't the kind of approval she had expected, no grand gestures, no promises, but it was enough. Her breath caught, and for the first time, she felt free. The weight that had crushed her all these years? Gone. It wasn't their approval she'd been seeking all along. It was her own. The quiet hum of her success filled the room, the hum of victory, the hum of a woman who had built herself from the ground up. She stood there, letting it all sink in. A year ago, she was drowning in expectations, torn between who she was and who they wanted her to be. But this was freedom, and nothing was more satisfying than realizing she was enough, just as she was.